All right, and we are just about ready for the next run, Curse of the Azure Bonds with MSKain, so we're going to go ahead and throw it right on over to him.
Okay, welcome to Curse of the Azure Bonds. Before we do anything else, I have some characters to name and then one more to create, which will be real fast. Can I get those names?
Yes, you can. So number 1 will be Dan.
Okay, Dan. Next one.
Number 2 is Skub, S-K-U-B.
Okay. Third character.
How many characters do you have available to you?
15
Okay.
character limit, so it's pretty big.
Number 3 is Dragonista.
Dragonista. Okay. Next.
Number 4 is Mort the Chicken.
Mort the Chicken.
Yeah,
Does that fit? Not quite.
There's no spaces.
No spaces? Okay.
Yeah.
Then that'll work then. Mort the Chicken. That's a nice last-minute snipe I didn't see before.
So,
Okay.
and then last one, it's a 3-way tie for the last 2.
Oh dear.
So I'm going to let you choose
All right.
which 2 we do. So we have Doomtube, Bart Pig, and Joe.
Okay, I'm going to go with Doomtube, and I promised my sister I would name one Joe if there was a tie after my nephew who is watching. Shoutouts to you, Joe. I've been spending the week with him, and he's very happy to see me. He's also my biggest fan, although not for these games.
I don't understand why.
Whoops, I didn't do that. Modify. Come on. Joe's. Oops. Okay, there we go. And the last baggage character.
So the baggage character, I don't know how we want to resolve this. The baggage character is also a tie between Nodwick and Richie.
Okay, Richie was also put in by my sister, so I'll go with the other one this time, Nodwick, to keep in with the Monty Python theme, as I like that, Nodwick the baggage character. All right, so now we have Nodwick. Nodwick will make an appearance later on, but he's not going to do much for now. So this is Curse of the Azure Bonds. This is an old-school DOS game where it's the second in the series of the first original 4 Gold Box games by SSI, the sequel to Pool of Radiance, and a game I played a whole lot as a kid, and now I'm speedrunning it. So I hope that you all enjoy, and we can get started in, if we're ready, in 3, 2, 1... go. All right. So we're adventurers who have saved the city of Flan, and then we wake up in Tilverton with all of our equipment gone and suddenly have these blue bonds on our hands. We have a lot of money to buy equipment with, but we don't have much else now. We don't even know what's going on or who kidnapped us. And these magical bonds are going to be used by these 5 villains to take control of us. They have various uses for us, from inane to kind of actually make sense. We'll go over those as we go through them. First, I need to memorize some spells, because you didn't have magic points in old D&D. You had spells that you had to memorize. Innkeeper tells us something's wrong. I improve my speed. And I'm going to buy some equipment for my characters, and in the meantime, sorry, I didn't introduce my couch here. Thank you, Del, for sitting on the couch for me. He's going to explain some of the game details and especially D&D things for me. And while I'm busy buying equipment, would you please explain the party setup I've got here?
Mostly what you'll see is he's got 4 fighters, 4 human male fighters, because in 2nd edition AD&D, which is what this game is based on, male humans are the only ones who can get the highest strength, which means that they can hit harder and more often. He has 1 half-elf, because half-elves can be both fighter and magic users, which will come into play during combat to actually allow him to defeat people without actually taking damage by paralyzing them, stinking clouding them, various other spells. And then 1 female cleric, because you should always have a healer, and then the female part will come into play later on with a sort of side quest, I would almost say.
Yeah, it's a side quest that can help me avoid a particularly long and drastic fight, so. And that's my equipment. Now I have to equip it all.
And one thing that I will probably harp on throughout is the system that this game uses for hitting, or, well, preventing hit is THAC0, which is the absolute worst thing in the world, because it is, THAC0 stands for to hit armor class 0. And if you notice, his AC is now in the negatives. So that means he has below 0 AC, which for me, it's just very counterintuitive. Instead of being able to look, okay, I need to get higher numbers. No, you want smaller numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that they fixed in 3rd edition D&D onward, but in 1st and 2nd edition, you need negative armor classes, and it's just kind of silly, but here we go. So we have two things we need to do in the town before we can move on. One is to buy our equipment, and the other, which I just did, is to visit the Sage Filani, who tells us a lot of stuff about our bonds, which is incorrect. And now suddenly the king's carriage is coming, and we are compelled by the power of the bonds to attack the king's carriage. The king is not inside. It's a bard pretending to be him with some excellent voice lines, but then the guards come to defend after we do this action. The king knew that he was being targeted by assassins, and so he went and had this poor, pathetic Georgie Wyvern Spur there to take the fall for him, basically. This was a very good row on paralyzing, as he mentioned. 2 holds there. Okay, this is an auto-finished fight then. Okay, one guy was not paralyzed. Oh, that's not good. Okay, we did. We had one that was not. Hard to see with the speed at maximum. We surrender immediately, so we don't have to fight anymore. Thieves break us out, and then we get taken down to the Thieves Guild, where we're allowed to rest for a second to get our spells back. And we're told that there's some assassins called the Fire Knives who are muscling in on the Thieves' territory, and they're trying to kill the king and overthrow the kingdom. And that's what the Fire Knives want to use us for, is their patsies. So it's actually a more or less okay plot. But while we're in the middle of this talking together, some thieves that have turned against us, as well as their Fire Knife leaders, are broken in, and they kill the guild leader. We have this fight with a bunch of thief allies who look exactly like the thieves that are there already. This was not a great starting turn. Let's have you shoot from the back with the bow. I've equipped a couple of bows early. In Pool of Radiance, the previous game, bows are very powerful. You use them throughout most of the game, but in this game you get the best sword for every member of the party really early on, and your characters on auto won't use that. It just tends to not be very useful to use bows in this game. You don't get any magical ones until the end of the game, unlike the previous game. So just for now, we've got them, but later on we'll be sticking pretty much only to melee attacks. She took damage. So one of the other things in the game is that if you it takes a certain amount of turns to cast a spell, and if you take damage during that turn, then you cannot cast spells. Or if you're casting a spell that takes more than just an instant cast, and you're hit while you're casting it, you lose that spell. So we had a bit of rough RNG here on the effects, but yeah. Paralyzing is kind of bad in Final Fantasy games. You saw how bad it was in Final Fantasy 2 this morning. It is far worse in this game because, as Del said, when you have a character paralyzed by Stinking Cloud or by Hold Person or a sleep spell, anything that renders them effectively helpless, they get one shot by any attack, including if they have, it doesn't matter if they have 100 hit points and you're using a mage that throws a dart that does 1 to 3 points of damage. It's a guaranteed hit, and it will one-shot them down into dying. Now, one thing that this game does have different than D&D, and in most D&D rule sets in the early editions, when 2nd and 1st edition, when you went to 0 hit points, you were considered dead. But SSI actually made this a little bit easier than that. You go down unconscious at 0 hit points, and when you're in the negatives, you are dying, and you only die when you reach negative 10 hit points, or if you leave a dying character without bandaging them. Bandaging is just an action we'll take, which hopefully we won't need to worry about in this. Enemies never bother to bandage their own, of course. There's also morale. These thieves have now started running away because they're frightened by my prowess, and that actually turned out not to be too bad a fight. Okay. Now, most random encounters are slow, so I'm going to be resetting if I get most of them throughout the course of the game. Now, unfortunately, this is a set battle where get out your Franker Z's and your Oh My Dogs. We unfortunately have to butcher a bunch of fighting dogs that the Fire Knives are inhumanely using against us. These poor doggos are not equipped for battle against plate mail armored warriors, but no way to avoid this fight, unfortunately. One of the other weird things about it, dogs count as, you can see they take up 2 squares instead of 1, these very big dogs, despite not being very powerful. Large creatures in 1st edition AD&D took different damage from weapons than others did. You notice I bought all longswords for my fighters. The longsword is the best one-handed weapon in the game. It does pretty much the maximum damage any weapon does to, or any one-handed weapon does to medium and small-sized creatures like humans, but larger creatures, it actually does a d12, which is tied for the second best amount in the game that you can really do. Okay, now I need to break into here. Okay, good. Sometimes I fail to break in, and that can cause problems. But here I'm going to get my first super powerful item, this dust. This dust is super awesome, and I'm going to explain what that does later. A magic longsword just for one battle coming up. And Mort the Chicken's going to get the banded mail because that will help him move a little faster coming up. Okay, now I can rest in here so I can use the fix command. In the previous game, you had to individually cast each healing spell and then rest and rememorize it every time you took damage. It was very slow. It was faster to rest for days. Now, however, we get a fix command, which instantly heals us. Might notice that I'm quick saving very often, safety saving very often here, especially in here because I don't want these very slow random encounters. Oh, and I also should mention, there's one. I'm going to be doing a donation game where I will donate $1 for every random encounter we get over the course of the game. So that's the first one. And actually came a lot later than usual. And except for this intro music, the game has no background music, so we have we actually have a soundtrack playing in the background, which is from the NES version of Pool of Radiance, because Nintendo didn't want a game without a soundtrack in it, so they made one for their NES port. NES didn't get ports of the later games, though, so boom. Okay, we're through into the sewers. Sewers have no random encounters by the route I take, which is very convenient, so we don't have to worry about that here. No, I accidentally did that again. There's an area you're trying to climb into. That's not the area I want to go to, though. Okay, next area. This is the door I want to go into. Okay, now these are Otyugs. They are actually garbage collectors. Del, can you explain what Otyugs are?
Otyugs are used in sewers to eat, well, waste. They're big, they're hard, and they will usually poison you if you attack them, because they're like 90% waste, is the nice way to put it.
Okay, I went the slightly wrong way, but that's okay. We're where we need to be now. Doomtube is going to bless and prayer us before this fight with things. Yeah, so what we did with them is that they have some treasure, and they say that they'll give us the treasure if we will defeat these other Otyugs for them who have a much nicer pile of garbage. We agree to it because we want to avoid fighting them, but we don't want to take the time to fight other Otyugs either, so we're not going to do the quest. You know, standard RPG speedrun stuff. This is it's a fight that I don't need to take, but I do for a little bit of just safety experience and one magic item that's kind of useful, a couple that are moderately useful. Oh no, that's fine actually. Okay, now let's see. The magical staff sling goes to Doomtube. It's the only ranged item that clerics can use, and the cleric isn't great in combat, so having a +1 staff sling is just kind of useful. There's a Girdle of the Dwarves, which just gives a couple extra hit points but lowers charisma. I need my main character to keep more charisma, so I don't want that. The rest of the stuff really isn't that necessary to me. I can also rest again here. Bless and Prayer are two buff spells that increase my chance to hit that I use before every major battle, or if I have a chance to rest afterwards. Now we're going to sneak in. This is a place where I can train. You don't just gain levels when you get enough experience. You actually have to spend... It's here. You actually have to spend money and go to a training hall to do it. Now that room I could get encounters in. This is the secret area. I can't, but now I can get encounters again, so I want to save the game to avoid them because they are slow. Alright, we managed to make it through without encounters. So now the shenanigans are going to start. Now we're getting our second most powerful item in the game, the necklace, as well as the second most powerful sword in the game. Then we don't get a better one until really end game. And a new magic spell for Doomtube in case she's forced into melee combat, which isn't often, but better safe than sorry. We'll drop that one. Okay. Now we're going to save the game, and shenanigans are going to ensue. Del, would you try to please explain what I'm about to do here?
What he's about to do is he's about to do what item duping. He's going to put in that 7th character we made, load it up with items he wants to duplicate, drop that character, and then exit out, because the game will register that those items are both on the character that he dropped and on the original characters. So then he'll have 2 copies, and then he'll just constantly repeat it until he gets enough so that everybody has what he needs for it. For the rest of the run, what he's duplicating are the swords, the magic sword, and also the necklace, which is a necklace of fireballs.
As well as the dust.
Oh, the dust. I forgot about the dust. But yeah, so that then he'll just constantly drop the party, because the game reads that if you have nobody in your party, it forces you back to the opening screen, and which is the same thing as saving and quitting. So he'll just constantly do that. I think that's about it.
That is pretty much it, yes.
And do you want me to explain what the dust is, since I know what that is as well?
Go ahead and explain the dust. It's going to be a big deal for
the dust,
for the game.
If you've played any D&D, you've always heard of the dust of invisibility, which is what that is. It'll turn. It's got it's a single-use item, and it'll turn one character invisible. And so it's useful in combat, because if the enemies can't see you, they can't hit you. And so he'll turn his party invisible, and then he'll probably paralyze them and then throw fireballs at them, because, well, fireball is the iconic D&D spell through the necklace.
Yep.
And I think now we can send it over to the host for
any donations or messages that might want to be read right now, because I have a few more minutes, so I have to play around with this duplicationing. That's it there. Okay.
I do indeed. So first, we have several donations that have come in the last little bit. We have a $10 donation from Anonymous, thank you very much, and a $5 donation from MK Bunny. It says, I wanted to try and make sure that MSKain's nephew Joe could be part of the party. So here's another $5 to hopefully make that happen. Good luck again, big brother, and hopefully next year I can finally couch commentate.
Thank you, sis.
And then an $11 donation from NPC. I gotta say with emphasis, or exclamation mark at the end of that. Can't think of a more worthy hero to help break the curse of the Azure bonds than the greatest hero of them all, Mort the Chicken. Here's $11 to make that happen.
Okay.
And indeed, it happened. And we have a $50 donation from Nicholas Sellier. Thank you very much. I'd also like to point out again that with all these donations, if you hit certain thresholds, you'll be entered in for drawings for certain prizes throughout the run. Currently, if you donate $20, you'll be entered into a drawing to win a Super Nintendo Classic with 2 controllers. And if you ever hit $100 cumulative throughout the run, so if you donate $20 now, $20 later, as long as it ends up being $100 total, you will be entered into win a Nintendo Switch with an RPG bundle.
Okay, we're just about done here. Now we can add Joe back into the party. Joe needs a spare longsword. Even these magical items are not identified, but most magical items don't need to be identified to be used, fortunately for us, and definitely not to be multiplied. So I'm not even going to bother identifying them, because I know which ones are that are important. There are 2 longswords in there. One is a flame tongue +1 weapon, which is okay, but not the one that I really need. My missile weapons are now useless. And actually, I ought to go ahead and, let's see. Who has 4 necklaces? You do. Trade 1 to Joe. I think you still have too many. That's okay. Alright, now the real shenanigans of the game are going to start. Because now, as Del said, with this Dust of Disappearance, you can be hit by melee, but only if the enemy, is next to you. They won't even seek you out. They'll just stand there waiting for an enemy to show up next to them. They can't be targeted by any spells, even AoE spells. They won't bother to try to throw at us. And it's going to make the rest of the game pretty easy. This is among the most broken things. And we're immediately spotted by our Fire Knife Patrol 1 space from the spot where we need to go to start the battle. Wonderful. Okay, so that is 2 random encounters so far. That's actually not bad for this, for the first section of the game, actually. I usually get a lot more than that. Okay, we surrender the Fire Knights. They take us to their leader. The princess who they've captured busts out of her chains, breaks the... oh, I forgot to use the dust. Okay, now I have to reload again. Of course it's going to happen in a marathon. I was so excited I didn't get the encounter.
It is a little surprising to me that the fastest way to be able to reload a save is to just force quit the entire game.
Yes, unfortunately that is the way it goes. But it's definitely faster than doing room encounters, because I knew immediately because they shot at me, and they shouldn't be able to shoot at me because I should be invisible. Okay, here I need to use the dust. Now these are one-shot items, and the necklaces have limited charges as well, which is why I multiplied so many of them. Now I need to make sure my characters aren't on quick combat, because these necklaces are not friendly fire items. They will hurt me as much as they will hurt the enemy, so I need to be very careful where I throw them. And if you have that on auto and you're wearing a necklace, your character will say, oh hey, I can throw fireballs at the enemy, and they throw it at the nearest enemy and hit half the party, or more. So quick combat, as you've seen, makes my characters attack very fast, and I'll be using that a lot. It's the fastest way to get through a lot of combats, but I'm getting good rolls here too. The damage range of the Necklace of Missile fireballs, these can be tiny fireballs or huge fireballs, and so they range from like 2 damage to in the 20s, and I've rolled a lot of good damage here, so I'm getting a little bit of okay RNG at the start, and I'm almost hesitant to say that. And that's it. Okay, that's the first quest done. And now our bond goes away. We've been freed from the fire knives, but we're banished from the city because we did try and kill the king, plus we still have bonds on us, and who knows what they'll do. So we have 2 forced wilderness encounters on the way, and this is the first one. Wilderness encounters are rather annoying because the enemy starts at a far distance, and the terrain is very random. All these trees everywhere interfere with our enemies, can go and keep them from grouping up. It's hard to reach them, and also fireballs have less of an area effect out of doors. They only hit within 2 squares instead of 3, so it's a little more inconvenient to use the fireballs. Also, Dust of Disappearance lasts for a long time, but it doesn't last between camping or traveling in the wilderness, so we don't have Dust of Disappearance for this, which is actually better because it means that the enemy is not standing far away wondering why they can't see anybody. Usually against a lot of enemies, even single ones, fireballs do average more damage than I can at this stage of the game with my single melee attacks. But against a big enemy, it's usually okay. You go ahead and see if you can magic missile. That's a... there. Okay, that'll finish that, I believe. You have to go through the party before you can end the battle. Okay, so there's hippogriffs. Now we can enter the city and do our training and such things. First, we're going to go to the store and check out these potions I've got so I know which ones are which. The invisibility potion I don't need because, lol. Those others will come in useful, but most importantly, it kind of just... I didn't do it right, though. I need to identify one other thing. Oh, well. When you spend money in a shop, it auto money changes for you. This is important because money has weight. So if you're carrying around 1,000 gold pieces, that's 1,000 gold pieces of weight. Which can really slow your party down. We don't want that. So, let's see. Now we can go to the hall. We have to spend 1,000 gold or 200 platinum pieces to train all the characters. The paladin that I have is a little bit behind the fighters for now, but he will reach the a power point at level 7 at the same general time. Okay, memorize. I get another prayer spell, which will come in handy, and I need my spells back here. Alright, so now we're moving on to the next area. There are 3 areas we can go to here. I go in the area that is generally considered where they want us to go in the game. It just works out better overall. And now the village of Hap is... on the way, we have our second encounter against dragons here. And dragons in first edition are a little bit different than the dragons in later editions. They have only 48 hit points, which is pretty low for normal dragons. In 2nd edition onward, your dragons are usually, your ancient dragons are 200 hit points plus, but they do breath weapons that are equal to their maximum hit points. So I only have 36 hit points left on the cleric. That's and they can do 48 with a breath attack, so that would kill her. So that's not something we want to have happen. So we want to try and wait. Luckily, they will not move and then use breath weapon. They will only use breath weapon if they haven't moved yet. There are 3 dragons, so there's another one out there somewhere. There he is. Okay, where is he? Can I see him? He's 16 away. Geez, he is fairly trapped. This is a very unlucky little situation. Still 7 away. Now, because I have banded mail +1, it's as good as the plate mail I bought in the shop, but it lets me move a lot faster. Everybody else in their plate mail is only moving 6 movement a turn. Unfortunately, the Necklace of Missiles do not have a really great range on them. I can hit with the Staff Sling at least. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay, he can't see the dragon. Can you see the dragon from here? Yes. Okay. Let's go ahead and cast Magic Missile. This is a little bit on the fly routing. Normally, I would like all 3 dragons to get close to me, and then I would fireball them all at the same time, but this one is stuck behind the terrain because it's so big, so I have to try and kill it from a long distance, which is difficult. Okay, that should work. And now I'm getting my low rolls on damage. Okay, this hopefully will finish it. Yes, good. Okay, that's it for this battle, finally. Alright, now we're going to enter the city of Hap. We have a bit of damage on us, but that's okay. Now, Hap is being ruled by some Dark Elves who are serving Tricandros. Del, can you tell us what makes Dark Elves scary in the first couple editions of AD&D?
In the first couple editions of D&D, what makes Dark Elves or Drow scary is the fact that they have an innate magical resistance, which means that spells actually have a even less likely chance to affect them than normal. So the necklaces of fire, necklaces of missile, the stinking clouds, the hold person spells, all are less likely to affect the Drow. So that, and then also I think in 2nd edition they also have a higher strength than normal elves. I know that they can hit harder and faster, but it's just, I don't remember exactly why.
Yeah, I think they do in this as well. In addition, they're very often casters and always fighters in addition. So this group here, the front row of mages consists of their fighter mages, and so they would cast lightning bolts at us. The back row would cast hold clerics who would cast hold person on us. And you've already seen how devastating hold person can be to the enemy, but thanks to the Dust of Disappearance, we can't see them. But unfortunately, because of that 50% magic resistance, it's not worth our time to try and use the necklaces of missiles on them, because with their 50% magic resistance, as Del says, they're 50% likely not to be affected at all. They'll just resist it, and it won't have an effect even if I blow it up straight on them. So we're going to be fighting a lot of Dark Elves over this section of the game, and so those necklaces of missiles are not going to be nearly as useful, unfortunately for us. But now we've freed the city of Hap. They're super happy. Pun possibly intended. But now we need to leave because we need to get go training before we move on to the next area. So we're actually going into wilderness. We're now going to go back to Assembra and go to the training hall so that Joe can become a level 5 magic user. He's going to learn a haste spell and not a fireball, because haste is actually better for us. We have all the fireballs we need, really. Our paladin can also reach level 6. Okay, now we need to go to the inn. This is something I often forget to do. Now that we have haste, we need to memorize it before the next big fight, because the 2 hardest fights in the game are actually coming up for a couple of reasons, which I'll go into when we get there. So these are dangerous times. Fix up, do our rest. Okay, we've got all our spells memorized. Okay, now back to Hap. now we, from the Afridi leader, we picked up this, let's see, yeah, we're fine. Scub. Put some dust on us because a lot of travel is instantaneous. You can see a clock in the game that some things do not take any time. Even though we had to make our way from the village to the wilderness, essentially no time took place during that travel because it was an event rather than any considered actual movement. Most of the time it takes 1 minute to take a step. If you put search on, which increases your chance of finding secrets and traps, but also increases your chance of encountering monsters, you get 10, it takes 10 minutes. And other than that, resting and traveling on the overworld map and battle turns are the only thing that advance the time. And Dust of Disappearance lasts for like a couple of hours, so most of the time we only need it once or twice per dungeon. So now after we kill these guys, we're going to take their, oops, that was supposed to be a no. We're going to take their armor for a couple of our characters. In particular, Scub needs it, Dragonista needs it, Doomtube needs it, and Joe would need it, but I don't have enough. I'll have to get more later. Okay, that's all I have for now. So the Drow Chainmail is really special. Del, can you explain what's special about Drow Chainmail?
Drow Chainmail actually has a very high armor class, very low weight so that you can still move faster, but the downside is that once you leave actual dungeons, it will instantly degrade so that it's no longer useful.
Lore-wise, I think they use a kind of adamantite residue that disappears in the sunlight. So, but now these friendly Dark Elves, including this woman named Silk, will put a mark only on a female character, which is why we needed one. This mark will enable us to avoid some fights here. There's our third encounter. We can just flee from these without getting in the fight, which is useful. There's 4. But now these ones, that's 5, but because of Silk's mark, you don't even have the chance to fight. They just leave you alone, which is, you know, since I can just flee, not that huge of a deal, but it's a much bigger fight later on that we'll be able to avoid. So that puts us up to 7, I think, which is more usual here. I'm going to save the game here, not in a dangerous fight exactly, but coming up is 1. So it's very fast save the game. So we also have salamanders. Now, first edition AD&D wasn't great with how it did fire elemental resistances, but there are some creatures that are like, fireballs will actually affect Afridi. They're resistant to fire slightly, but they're not healed by it, even though they're genies made out of fire. Salamanders, however, are totally immune to fire, so once again, the fireballs won't do anything against them either. So, again, resorting to just basic stuff. Dan is going to get better armor here in a second, so he doesn't need it. Joe is the only one left who really needs chainmail for speed. Okay, now one of the 2 worst fights in the game coming up right here. We're going to cast our haste spell. We're going to cast our prayer and bless. And now we fight the Dracolich. The Dracolich has a gaze attack, which can actually affect us even when we're invisible. There are 2 creatures in the game that can do this, and he is one of them. And it paralyzes, so that can be very, very bad. I think he's also immune to fire. He's not immune to magic missile, at least, so I can do some guaranteed damage with that. Okay, he paralyzed Joe, but luckily he's not in melee range of Joe, so he won't hit him. And he's almost dead. He has a very low armor class. That was a pretty good fight. Thank you. Yes, that's a pretty scary fight. If he paralyzes my character and then immediately attacks afterwards, he can one-shot them. Now we're heading up into the Wizard's Tower. We meet Dracandros. Dracandros is our second master, and he has a brilliant plan that he is going to cause the humans to go to war with the dragons by bringing a bunch of dragons to his tower, and he commands us to attack the dragon, but it's just an illusion. And so he says, look, the humans are trying to kill you all. And the dragons are like, you commanded them to. Take your mark off of them, and we'll see what the humans do. So not very smart. He releases us. As long as we don't attack the dragons, we don't have to worry about that. We attack him instead. He flees the tower, leaves some guards behind, and now we have to make our way out because he teleported us to the top of the tower at the start of this. Whoops. That was the wrong key press. No worries. We got this fixed. Okay.
Mind if I jump in here with some more donations?
Go ahead.
So we have a $25 donation from Anonymous. a $15 donation from Anonymous, and a $10 donation from Anonymous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also have a $5 donation from Jinx Black.
Hey, Jinx.
It says, to my brother MSKain, I'm so proud of you, man. You have worked hard to get here. Show the people a wonderful classic and a piece of nostalgia for us. May fortune favor your journey. Your brother and friend, Jinx.
There you go. Okay, so now coming up is the worst fight in the game, a fight against a Dark Elf Lord, Burly. He is a high-level fighter who can attack twice a turn. He has a -7 armor class, over 100 hit points. So because our invisibility helps, but we are not... but we aren't immune to his sword swings, so he's very tough. Plus, he hits us with a debuff when the battle starts called a Symbol of Pain, which reduces our chance to hit. And so, as a Dark Elf, he has a huge magic resistance, but I'm still going to attempt to use the Hold Person spell on him, because if I can hit him with it, that will make this battle basically be over. Stinging Cloud, I'm in too close of quarters to make use of that, but... I have 5 chances. Essentially, it's about a 1 in 20 chance, but you can see we're going to be wailing on him for quite a while now. And I can really lose this fight. This is basically the last time in the game that I can game over to a fight. Because from this point on, all the dangerous enemies are spellcasters. And they can't hit me because of the Dust of Disappearance. Not going well so far. Those swooshes are misses. The thunks are hits. You can, once you're used to this game, you can tell the difference between them. He's hitting and we're not. He's down to 47 hit points. Okay, he took 1 character down. Bandage. Okay, that's not... We can work around this. Okay, he's gone. We did it. Now, oh, poor Joe. All right. That's okay. Joe got the real experience he needed. So now, however, we get to best armor in the game, +2 shield, +3 plate mail, as well as a +5 draw longsword, which, as long as we're in the caves, will be useful. Like the armor, it will disappear when we, once we leave this area of dungeons. But for now, it's a very powerful weapon. So, oh, he can't memorize because he's unconscious. There we go. Fix him up. And rememorize the haste. Okay, now we're ready to begin again. We need some more dust because we could get some encounters. Now we're going to do a fun thing I don't normally do in the run, but oh, here's some random encounter. What are we up to now? Is that 8?
That is 8.
Okay. These encounters I'm going to fight because they are pretty quick. They're usually only 3 to 4 enemies, sometimes 6, but it's still not too bad to just beat them down. These magical swords I have luckily are frost brands, so they are +6 against fire creatures like salamanders. So a sign over the Siri Black Door reads Trial of the Sphere. Does anyone wish to enter? Joe, you're going to redeem yourself by entering. There's a room with this Orb of Annihilation and a mage on the other side, and this Orb of Annihilation will blow whoever it touches up. And so we concentrate on it as mages to try and make it move toward the opposing mage. And so we concentrate on it until it blows him up. And we get a lot of treasure, most of which we don't need. It's more money than we could possibly carry. We cannot possibly carry that, but it's not necessary, but it's a fun little distraction. And it's worth a lot of experience. Here's another Burly. He's just an illusion, though, luckily. Now, coming up, this fight is... we'll just go into the fight. Now, this is Dark Elves and Owlbears. Owlbears, one of the favorite weird creatures of D&D lore. Luckily, Owlbears, at least, can be hit by fireballs, so we'll blow them up real fast. And then deal with the drow the way we usually deal with the drow. If we get lucky, our fireballs will do a little bit of damage to some of the Dark Elves as well, which we got kind of lucky there. It's possible to make this a slightly better fight by coming around a different direction. The terrain is based on the actual area that you're in, as well as the direction you're coming from, and that affects the party formations. But it's still generally faster to come through here and not risk more random encounters. Okay, now I need to make sure to take the necklaces off before going to quick combat so my party doesn't decide to blow itself up. There are 2 more set encounters in the dungeon, including the final boss fight. Sometimes the AI is okay at chasing down enemies, and other times it's pretty stupid, as you can see. Now we've got morale running away in fear, which is fine. If enemies flee, I don't get experience to them. Some of them will also surrender, in which I will get their experience and loot, which is kind of nice. But right now it's not super duper necessary. Okay, now here is a magical note, which is supposed to tell us how to disarm these upcoming traps, but you can't really disarm it. I've tried many times and never gotten it to work. Here's a dragon heart, which is one of the things Silk wants. That is 10, I believe.
9.
9? Okay, I got one ahead. That's fine. Just a quick party of Dark Elves won't be too much problem. This is the second best group, a group of just 3 Dark Elves. The Salamanders are by far easier to kill because they have lower armor class. We get bonuses against them because of our Frost brands, and they have less hit points, but 3 Dark Elves is pretty good. The Ifrit is what we don't want to see. Party of Dark Elves is the same one again, I think. Yep.
So 10.
So that is 10, yep. And we only have 1 level left of this tower, and then we're done with the second of our 5 masters. Okay, we take some damage here from a pit trap. If you can disable the end a random encounter at the bottom as well. Awesome. So that's 11. That will happen quite a lot. In fact, there's one that I'm guaranteed to get because of some weird RNG things that I do in save quitting. That happens right after a set boss battle. I get a random encounter on the same square, pretty much guaranteed. But they will happen. Okay, yeah, it doesn't matter. All right, there's 12. Sometimes it's hard to, unless you've played the game, it's hard to tell the difference between the random encounters and the actual set ones. But especially with the Klubit coming. I am playing, by the way, on GOG.com version of this, which disables the copyright protection, which we'll be getting into in a minute here. In fact, once I finish up this upcoming battle with Dracandros, we'll need to cut off the final incentives for the run, the quest, fruit, and letter of power. So we're going to go ahead and refresh our dust here, just in case, because we are about to fight some wyverns who are very nasty. Because these wyverns have a poisonous tail sting, and poison in 1st edition AD&D is extremely nasty. It basically one-shot kills you, regardless. You think poison is nasty in a Final Fantasy or something, it is nothing compared to getting one-shot and just dying from a basic level 1 giant centipede monster. So we want to avoid going into melee combat with them at all costs, but luckily they are very vulnerable to fireballs, so we can just blow them up. They're not in a great formation being spread out across the bottom of the room here, but it's still relatively decent. We can usually hit 3 to 4, possibly even 5 at once, so careful aiming. Unfortunately, the game is too old to give you a kind of AoE reticle to, show you where you're firing at and what's in range of it. So it's something you have to know as you're playing this game, is the overall area effect of the fireball. It goes out 3 spaces from the middle, except for outdoors where it's 1 shorter. But basically that means if it's in the center of the screen, the top 3 and the 4 corner pieces and then the 2 spots right next to each of the 4 corner pieces are the only spots that will not be hit. And again, that's very important to know because you don't want to blow up your party with fireballs, because Dust of Disappearance doesn't mean that we're immune to magic, it just means we can't be targeted. And the enemy AI is too stupid to aim AoE spells next to us instead of right on top of us. Okay, there we are. She has too much money. She's weighed down by money. Too much money is a problem in this game. There's actually nothing to buy. The only use for money is to level yourself up. There is a magic shop in one of the last areas of the game, which you can buy some semi-useful magic items in, but you can't buy improved weapons or improved armor or anything that you'd normally get in a normal video game RPG. D&D was intended originally for you to get equipment by finding it, and so that's what happens in all of the gold box games. You pretty much have to find all of your magical equipment. So final battle coming up here. Drakandros, for this area at least. Drakandros is a mage. He has a ring. He has an invisibility spell on, which means that we also cannot hit him directly with spells. Even though we can see him, I can't target him, but I can drop it down right next to him, and then he'll take fireball damage. Ooh, the Dark Elf took damage too. And as I say, the Afrits, despite being fire genies, are not immune to fire. They take slightly reduced damage, but it's not all that much comparatively. Now I want to fireball Drakandros and get rid of him because he can do one dangerous thing, which is to cast a Fire Shield spell. Fire Shields is a level 4 spell that causes you, it's what later games call damage shields. Whenever you take melee damage, you deal that same amount of damage with your Fire Shield spell. So if we cast that and we run up and hit him with 2 attacks, we will be we'll be hurting ourselves a lot too. So taking him out with fireballs beforehand is the much safer alternative. Oh, you've actually used up your necklace, which is convenient timing. He's about to get something better than necklaces, which is why he has so few. And why I don't mind that he's run out. Since he is the mage, Drakandros has some pretty awesome wands that will do the same thing as fireballs effectively. As the necklace of missiles, I mean. Now, one of the spells that I had to get with my fire mage is a haste spell. And the reason that's important is that it doubles both your movement speed and your number of attacks each turn, which basically means that you're doing twice the damage effectively, which is very, very powerful in this game, and it's pretty much necessary for that Dark Elf Lord fight. So now Joe is going to get this bracers and ring instead of armor, which will allow him to move just fine. Now we get additional treasure, including 2 wands and another ring, which is a ring of wizardry, which allows him to equip more spells. Memorize more spells, and that's it. Now I can get some more encounters on my way out, including this one. That is 12?
That is 13.
13, okay. Unlucky 13 right here. We're lucky. Alright, now normally we would just leave, but we're going to go ahead and go to the caves, meet Silk, give her the dragon egg that we pulled out of a room earlier. Again, it's just more money and stuff that we really don't need, so we're just going to leave. But just completing it. It's worth some experience. The main way, and of course I get a random encounter going back into the tower real fast. So that's 14. This will be a quick fight, though.
Mind if I sneak in a donation or two real quick?
Go ahead.
So we have $20 from Theronia. It says, so many great runs. I wish I could be there for all of them. Good luck, MSKain.
Thank you.
$100 from Anonymous. Thank you so much. And $180 from Dowolf, who was the runner of the previous game. Says, as promised, here is $10 per death for all of my deaths and Children of Zodiarcs. I've learned my lesson, and I will not donate during a PJ run again.
Right. Okay. Oh, and now is coming up the Bridge of Destiny scene, so I'm going to need the those items. Your way is blocked by an impassable chasm. A narrow bridge is guarded by an old man. He cackles. You must answer me before the other side, EC. What is your quest? So what is our quest?
Your quest is to seek the Grail.
Seek the Grail remain. That's a good quest. Exclamation point. What is our favorite fruit?
Mango.
Still mango. And the letter of power?
F.
So what this actually is it's a in-game anti-piracy device. You actually had a code wheel for these early games, and you had to spin this weird code wheel to match up a couple of these runes, of Elven Dwarven runes, in order to reveal a secret word or a secret letter in order to verify that you have the game. It's disabled in the GOG version that I'm using here, which is very convenient, but it's just an interesting little thing, and I love the fact that they threw it in as a little scene here. So we may pass. Thanks to everyone for donating for those answers. We'll continue our quest to seek the Grail or get rid of the Azure bonds or whatever we're doing. Okay.
Just out of quick curiosity, what happens if you were doing if you had the anti-piracy stuff go on and you put in the wrong stuff?
It would drop you to DOS.
Oh, it just kicks you out of the game?
It just kicks you out of the game entirely, yep. It kind of happens at a random point in the game, but based on how I do the speed run, it's always going to show up at that point. So I'm glad that that's consistent because it makes it a little bit easier to put in a donation incentive. Interestingly, Pool of Radiance, the previous game, has one as well. And I did that wrong again. That's okay. But it is actually a little bit more in-depth, and it is not disabled by GOG.com. You have to know the password, but it's always the same password every time. But if you put it in wrong, a giant lizard man suddenly comes out of the door that you're trying to go through and kills the party without doing damage. Just kills all the party. It's like a D&D. Have you ever had that D&D GM who's like, rocks fall, everyone dies? That's what the game does to you if you don't put in the proper the proper code to get past that point. It's like they really believe in their anti-piracy there. Okay, now we've reached level 7, which is very important for the fighters because that means that we are going to be getting 3 attacks every 2 turns. So the first turn in combat we get 1 attack, and then the next turn we get 2, and that will continue back and forth. And it also means that when we're hasted, we get 3 attacks a turn. So that basically means that gaining level 7 for the paladins and the fighters gives me 50% more damage in melee. So that's very strong, and that's going to help out a lot in the next area as well. Alright, now we're going to memorize our new spells. I now have a lot of spells to memorize because of the Ring of Wizardry that I picked up from Dracandros. So now I get 2 haste spells, so a couple fights will go really nicely now. I get more powerful cure spells for the first time, so fixing will be slightly faster. And now we move on to the next area. Journey to the Standing Stone. At the Standing Stone, you see an old man who tells you to... who gives you advice all the time on where you should be going. And right now he's telling us seek green to the north, which is what we're doing. He is actually the final boss in disguise, trying to get us to eliminate his other allies for him. Okay, we're going to come into the city of Ulash, which is being contested by the Zentrim warriors of Zentil Keep and the Red Plumes of Hillsfar. The Red Plumes of Hillsfar are the good guys, so we're going to go with them. And we're going to do a save scum here in order to manipulate some RNG. I don't know why this works, but it does. If I try to go in and talk to the leader with the current things that I'm doing, he reacts in various ways to your party setup, to the fact that I have a Swan May, which I got from Silk in the previous thing. That's why I need my female cleric is for this event. He likes the Swan May. He likes how you talk to him if you talk a certain way. And he really likes you if you fight these spies here, but we're just going to let them go because that's slow. But if I go in without quitting and reloading, he thinks that we're obviously looters, and he attacks us. And then all of these red plume posts out here are going to be hostile to us. But by reloading the game, for whatever reason, instead we please him. This is a random encounter, although it always happens based on my RNG manip, so that is 15.
Yes.
Okay, here is a set encounter, which is very annoying because we have 2 mages that have on... that can also cast Fire Shield, and they have minor globes of invulnerability on, which means they're immune to 3rd level and less spells, which is very inconvenient for me. So I'm going to go ahead and use one of my haste spells here, because I don't need to encamp, as well as one of my prayer spells, because this is a good fight for it. Okay, so... Good, took out one real fast. Excellent. I did damage, so he can't cast Fire Shield. Again, that Fire Shield spell is extremely dangerous here, and wow, that was very quickly took care of them. That's nice. Magic Missile the Cleric in the back, and then otherwise set my men here too. I shouldn't have any necklaces on, so. I'm once again going to not be able to use the necklaces as much in this area because we'll be fighting shambling mounds a lot in this section. Del, can you explain what shambling mounds are?
Shambling mounds are a creature that is a pile of detritus that have been brought to life. And surprisingly enough, even though they are detritus, they're resistant, or depending on the edition, either resistant or immune to fire damage.
Yeah, in first edition, they're immune to fire, they take half damage from cold, and they get healed by lightning, which are your 3 primary elements. So since that's very inconvenient, it's a bit troublesome. It means that, but since they're immune to fire, we can't use necklaces and missiles. Yay, they surrendered. That's faster. All right. Luckily, we're going to get an item that will help us deal with them right here. This is a set encounter. We have to, although it's a random amount. Oh, did I get 2? That's awesome. You can get 2 to 6 in this battle, and 6 is slow, of course. 2 is fast. That's very nice. And my poor paladin is stuck behind the lines. Okay, he found a way through. So pretty much the only way we can beat them down is by attacking them. I could use Ice Storm as well, but since it does half damage, it's not very effective either. We are not hitting great, though. Okay, there we go. Okay, now we get to loot this dead cleric they're trying to drag away. He has a Wand of Lightning, which we don't want to use yet, but the Wand of Defoliation we do want to use because it is awesome. It does damage to plant monsters, and the detritus that we take damage from this pit trap here. Can't do much about that unless I had a dwarf in the party, but they have less strength. But they are swamp things. They are vines and water and moss and such things, so they get damaged by the Wand of Defoliation. It does a short-range cone effect, everything in the range of the cone, and does pretty heavy damage, in the teens to 20s, pretty much guaranteed. So that's going to be very effective for this area of the game and then be useless. Now we're going to pick up our 2 party members, Elias and Dragonbait. These are the only ones that we will have join in the game because it's just faster to do this, and they help out a little bit. So I am going to have to use more dust because they are not invisible, and that will mess up the fight if I don't. But this is the 2 big fights in this portion of the run as we fight the Cult of Moander. Moander is the god of slime and devastation. He recently died, and they're trying to use the bonds to bring him back to life. I don't exactly get how it works, but somehow it does. So the priest just paralyzes us, begins to use the thing, but suddenly it goes wrong, and the dimension breaks. Only a few pieces of Moander get through, and then the enemies, the cleric attacks us, and the bond disappears. So now that we're not bonded, we can kill the high priestess and get ourselves out of here, and after that we've dealt with the 3rd. Oh, and we're also picking up another item. So there are quest items that are actually just flags in the data code. They're not actual physical items you can pick up or drop or use, but they are necessary in order to defeat the final boss, and they're actually necessary for advancing the game triggers. The game trigger saying that we've completed this section of the game does not happen when we lose our bond, but rather when we pick up the key item, which is the Gauntlet of Moander. We got the Helm of Dragons from Dracandros, and in the final area we'll get the Amulet of Lathander. Mogion here, the High Priestess, who's the green cleric who looks a little different than the rest of the clerics. She has on the same best armor in the game, +3 plate mail, +2 shield, as well as a Cloak of Displacement, which is really nice. It has a lot of different effects in later editions of D&D, but in this game, its basic effect is that it gives us a 2 more armor class bonus, so I'll be giving that to one of the characters. Not super necessary. I often forget to loot it all entirely, but it's moderately convenient at least. So Elias and Dragonbait, this game is actually, as well as being the sequel to Pool of Radiance, it's based on the novel, The Azure Bonds, by Jeff Grubb, and I can't remember the name of his co-author for that. I apologize. It's listed in the credits for the game, though. But in it, Elias and Dragonbait are the 2 main characters in that game, and Elias is a flesh golem created by the group first using the Azure Bonds for various nefarious purposes, and she has to defeat them. So she recognizes our bonds and what they mean, and she's surprised about it, but since she's generally noble, she's helping out. Dragonbait is still moderately... he's appeared in a couple of other later on games in the Forgotten Realms universe. Oh, he is not the one I want on auto. Oops. He almost moved to the right position, though. So now we are fighting bits of Moander, which are effectively supersized shambling mounds. So once again, immune to fire and all that. They're just the 3 pieces of him that managed to make it through the... Oh, I better... she's not in range anyway, but I better take her necklace off before she decides to fireball somebody. How about that? Oh, not quite in the right place. These guys, because of their size, they have a weird effect on... with the Wand of Defoliation's cones, there's only one spot on the map I can really hit 2 of them at once, otherwise I can only hit 1. That's kind of a weird thing. I don't know why it works exactly, but it does. Yeah. Okay. They have 0 armor class, which is relatively low, but 140 hit points each. So this is normally a kind of dangerous fight, especially since they can rush in and surround you. But when all they can do is sit there because they can't see us and only attack when we get up close to them, they generally are pretty easy to take care of. The Dust of Disappearance is one of the most broken items ever given in any video game, or specifically role-playing game, because it is near invincibility that, when multiplied, lasts the entire game, as we've seen. So clean up this last bit of Moander, and then we're done here. There's more treasure behind the altar that Elias wants. We're not going to go get it because it's slow. Oh, I did forget to loot Mogion. Oh, too bad. Oh, well. Now we get the Gauntlet of Moander. And now we have to escape. Okay, Moander Fanatics attack. How many? Did I save right after that battle? I think I did, but I'm just going to blow them up. That's 16?
Yes.
Luckily, Moander Fanatics are, even though they're dressed in green, that does not give them protection against fireballs, so. Yeah, that went pretty fast. Shambling mounds are a lot slower since all you can do is melee them, and they tend to have a lot of hit points. Okay, now I can quit if I get the next one. I'm just going to quit here. Reload. I'll be doing a lot of that in the last 2 areas, unfortunately. This far, I've been actually pretty good. That's 17 now.
16.
Is that only 16?
That's only 16.
Okay, thanks. Useful having somebody keeping track of that. Thank you very much, Del.
It's no problem. Happy to help.
And so you can see Elias and Dragonbait are these 2 characters in the loading screen. This is the same cover that's on the book, although, of course, in here in blue tone. Ooh, good. Giant slugs we can invade. That's 16?
That is 16.
Okay, we go up the stairs. We don't go down the stairs. You just went up the stairs, and then it asks if you want to go down the stairs. Very convenient. Okay, now, Vegapygmies. This is a set battle. Vegapygmies are little plant guys. So... They are not sludge, however. They aren't slime things full of water like shambling mounds are, so they are very vulnerable to fireballs. They don't take extra damage or anything, but, you know, necklaces of missiles are effective against groups of anything if they're just there. We have large and small varieties here. Oh yeah, you have way too many necklaces. Alright, 2 enemies left. Let's use our Wand of Defoliation to defoliate this thing. And it's been defoliated. Okay. 2 more set encounters, 1 we can avoid. This is a set encounter, always get slugs here, you just evade them. Final fight in this area, last-ditch effort from the cultists of Moander to get revenge for their dead god. I almost feel sorry for them, so I'm going to blow them up with ice instead of fire, at least from 1 character. Let's see. Here's good. All right, and if the host has any other words or donations while I'm finishing up this last fight, this is pretty much more of the same we've been doing.
Yeah, of course. So we have a $50 donation from Dark Moon. It says, first time finally remembering to donate to this awesome marathon. You guys are supporting a great cause and should be proud of the work you've done year after year. Here's to another great marathon. Donation goes to Runner's Choice, which I believe is going to the Breath of Fire Dragon incentive.
Yep.
So as a reminder for all these incentives that we have coming on, if you are planning on donating or just kind of unaware of what all these incentives we're talking about, when you donate, you can apply your money to any number of incentives or bid wars. For example, so we have for the next few runs, we've fulfilled some of those like challenges that people will be doing in Suikoden. It's coming up. We'll be having a glitch exhibition that's already been filled at $1,000. For ease, we have a couple of incentives. It's been upgraded to a heart plane on the hard difficulty. That's already been fulfilled. But there's several incentives similar to that you can apply your money to if you want to see happen in the next throughout the run. For example, we have Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim Glitch Showcase if you're interested in seeing that. And then there's also things like upgrading runs to a 100%, like a Newtopia coming later on. There's an incentive for donating. If that reaches the incentive of $750, that run will be upgraded to a 100% run, completing more of the game, probably the side quest. I'm not exactly sure what relative to Newtopia, but 100% is generally just completing more of the game that you wouldn't necessarily have to at a bare minimum. So yeah, whenever you donate, feel free to apply those to any kind of naming incentive, any kind of challenge incentive that you would like.
All right, so now we leave. Elias and Dragonbait bid us farewell. Now, next area is going to be Zhentil Keep. Now, for some reason, we're carrying around these bonds on our arms just completely out in the open. And so far, during the course of this game, everyone's reacting to us as if we were members of Zhentil Keep, which are a pretty nasty bunch of, it's just a pretty nasty little, that was the wrong one, oh well. Group of people who are plotting to take over the realm and in service to the dark gods like Bane, who's one of the main, and Bane is the primary antagonist, outer antagonist of the entire Gold Box series in the Forgotten Realms universe. But and so they're all treating us like we're Zhentil people. But now, whoops. Enter the city. So now we're going to go take care of that. We have to go through customs, and it's rough. We actually may get encounters here, although we usually don't. But marathon luck being what it is, I'm pretty certain I'm going to get some random encounters this time around. You can avoid them usually by saying the right things, but okay, nope, looks like we're probably good. Alright, now this half-elf bard breaks us into the Temple of Bane to rescue our friend Dimswort, and then she leaves us here. So now we have to break in and help Dimswort out. He is a non-combat NPC who's just following us around. He's basically just like the key items we have. He's data, but not actually present at all in the game or we can do anything with. So now the fun part's going to be, we're stuck in the Temple of Bane, but somebody nice is going to come and break us out and take us to go see her master, a beholder. And beholders are really nasty. Del, would you like to tell people about one of the most favorite D&D monsters?
Beholders are creatures that are a big floating eyeball with tentacles that have more eyeballs. And they can do the eyeballs, the stock eyeballs.
There it is right there. That's a beholder.
Can do various rays, including disintegration, telekinesis, paralysis, and various rays. And then the big main eyeball actually has an anti-magic cone that any spell or spell-like effect that takes place while it's looking in that direction just doesn't happen.
Yep. So they're a really nasty enemy. So what happened is he brought us in here because they're servants of a dark god. The people of Zhentil Keep and their allies are not exactly on friendliest terms, so they're always competing and trying to one-up each other and do other, nasty things. And so we were actually taken in by, it's the chief of Zhentil Keep, Fazal, who has put the bond on us. But this beholder Dexum, who also serves Bane, is trying to one-up him. And so he tried to bring us into his lair here, this Cave of the Beholder, so that he could conduct experiments on us and find what these bonds are really all about. But right before he could conduct it and start doing anything to us, Fazal breaks in and says, no, these people are my property as long as I live. So Dexum says, okay, die then, and disintegrates him. So that gets rid of our bond. And that was a random encounter, actually. There's a lot of random encounters in this room, like right there.
18.
I'm probably going to rack up 5 or 6 in this room trying to get out, but these are very slow battles, so this tends to still save time. If I get one like on the spot right before the door, I think I'll just take the battle, finish off the enemy, and move on. Because this room, once the beholder kills Fazal, he pieces out, and so the forces of Dexum and the forces of Fazal are now in the middle of this big fight here, and we're just caught in the middle. And that's 2 steps.
18.
We'll go with it. I can kill these guys pretty quickly in the middle of the room. But so this is a very time-intensive part because of all these random encounters we get. It's a pretty encounter-intensive cave. There are, in addition, 4 set encounters that I have to get before we're through here. Wand of Fireballs is superior to the necklaces. It tends to be higher level fireballs, although that was a really poor roll. But you never see like single digits, 5s and 7s rolled as the primary number like you do with the necklace of missiles. It also has a longer range. Got to be a little bit careful with my charges though. Okay, took out the mages, which is nice. These mages aren't dangerous though, especially since they can't see me. Otherwise, you can imagine how difficult these fights would be in a essentially glitchless run, not using that item duplication glitch, which is kind of not really a glitch. It's not intended, though, so it falls under the same category, but even though it's been known to exist, they never removed it from any of the other Gold Box games because it just kind of is how the game works. It's the same thing that allows a New Game Plus. After you've beaten the game, most of these Gold Box games, you can remove your characters and start them all over, and they will you can play the game again with all of the equipment that you had, as well as the levels, and going up to the maximum level allowable by the game. So you can continue playing them and gaining levels and such. So there is a possibility for a New Game Plus category, which I haven't done myself yet, but is definitely out there. As well as you can transfer... Oh, and everyone's running away now. That's very inconvenient. Pretty rare for these guys to decide to run, and not helpful. Okay, that was nice. He is out of necklaces. I need to give him a new one. You can't trade items in the middle of combat, however, so I'm going to have to wait until after combat. There we go. Okay. That was a much slower fight than I wanted it to be. Okay. Items. Who has 3? Dragonista does. Give poor Dan another necklace. Can I get lucky? Yes, I can. Excellent. Okay, I'm out of there. So that was put us at 19?
17.
17, okay.
You only got 2 in that room.
Okay. There's another one. This is a pretty maze-like cave. There's a lot of little things that, little traps and stuff and dead ends and a lot of extra set encounters if you take the wrong path. So luckily I have, oh my.
18? No, 19. Now it's 19.
Yeah, yep, that happens. It's very odd because there are some places where the RNG follows a very set pattern after you quit and reload, like when I do the talk with the Red Plume Commander in Ulash. Priam is his name. He comes back in later games here too as an ally. But here I can get an encounter after 5 steps after saving and reloading, and then I can get it like 2 steps or 1 step as we just saw. There's another one.
20.
This is where I'm going to rack up most of my encounters, is this cave, and possibly the end game. This is the next last area of the game, and the last area also has a pretty darn annoyingly high encounter rate. Although something interestingly happened to me in the practice room yesterday that never happened before. I got an encounter with 0 enemies. It showed the little portrait for the enemy that I encountered, and then immediately went to the victory screen saying, "You have earned 0 experience for vanquishing the enemies." Never had that happen before. Nope, I took a wrong step there again. That's the small step that I usually take wrong. When I first route these games, I make heavy use of the clue book, which is included in PDF format with these downloads, to memorize all the maps and where I need to go. But after spending a lot of time on the run, as I have here, I have them mostly 90% memorized for the places I need to go, or 99%. Occasionally I'll do a misstep, but... Okay, oh, now I know. Okay, this is a set encounter, not a random encounter.
All right.
This is one that is always there, so now I know where I'm at again. Almost got lost there for a second. That could have been bad. Oops, threw that too close. I also... Oh, I did trade him one, which is why he's got it. Okay, that is fine. That is where I need to throw my spells. That will not hit him. Luckily, I have some additional healing. I haven't had to use my potion of extra healing yet, which is nice. I usually end up using that somewhere in Dracandros' tower because of too much damage taken. You can, there in Zentil Keep before I came here, I could have bought more healing potions if I needed, but it's pretty slow. Usually don't need that much extra healing in the game besides just your basic rests. Now, you can get random encounters while you're resting unless you rest in specifically safe areas, so you have to be judicious about where you do it, which is why after defeating the Dark Elf Lord, I climbed back to the top of that tower because the game tells you the door is stout enough to defend against an attack. You can rest safely here, so you know that no matter how long you rest, even if you rest for weeks on end, nobody can climb to the top of that tower and get you. Okay, so there's that encounter. Next set encounter is going to be our Beholder friend. We're finally going to catch up with him. And then we're going to get a guaranteed random encounter right afterwards. Of more of these Zentil warriors. If I took this fight here, I would probably not get that fight afterwards, but taking it after the fight with Dexa means that I have haste on, so it's more convenient to do it then anyway, since I have to essentially take it. So that's 20?
22.
22, okay.
No, 21. 21. I can count, I swear.
That's okay. All right. I often lose track of these kinds of countings when I go through them. Okay, next spot is going to be the Beholder. Just for safety, we're going to reuse Dust of Disappearance. And then we're going to cast our spells. Last time I only have one prayer now, because I accidentally memorized another one of those. Oh well. And now we have caught up to the Beholder. The Hooded Woman is a Medusa. Oh no. The Medusa is one of, along with the Dracolich we fought earlier, one of the 2 characters in the game who can gaze on me even when I'm using Dust of Disappearance. So she can turn me to stone. Luckily, she is generally pretty slow in her initiative and only has a few hit points, so I can cleave her up before she gets a turn most of the time. Although I would not be surprised to see it happen this time of all times. Be the first time that she gets the stone off and actually turns the character to stone. Can't quite reach. Ooh, some good fireballs. Already only need 2 to take him down that far. Okay, Medusa's done. This fight is no longer dangerous because, yeah, the Beholder can kill 3 characters a turn with his mighty Death Rays. He has a Death Ray, Disintegrate Ray, and a Flesh to Stone Ray, plus a Cure Serious Wounds Ray, or Cause Serious Wounds Ray, which will do a decent amount of damage, but he is not nearly so dangerous when he can't target us. Now, in an actual game of D&D, the GM would have the Beholder use that anti-magic cone to get rid of our Dust of Disappearance, but the game isn't programmed like that. That was a bit too difficult of a dispel effect for them to program into the game, so they just make him immune to magic, essentially, is how his anti-ray works to protect him, and that's all it does. He has some random magic items, they're not useful. Retrieve the Amulet of Lathander, and that's 22. It is a random encounter that, for whatever reason, in the RNG is completely reliable based on how I play the game. It's always Zhentarim as well, which are the most likely enemies to fight down here. The other possible encounter are the priests with minotaurs, which we fought a couple of set battles of, but the Zentil soldiers are much more common. It's so nice to finally be able to blow up the enemies with Necklace of Missiles after having to go through 2 big dungeons where most of the enemies were immune to them. If our host has any more words as I'm making my way out, now would be a good time for some of them.
I always have more words. We have a $5 donation from Paul. It says, I was really happy to see Azure Bonds on Twitch and saw it was for a great cause. I'm confused. He says that like it's unusual to see over 10,000 people watching Azure Bonds on Twitch.
Like it's a 30-year-old game. Yeah, you see that all the time on Twitch.
We have a $50 donation from Anonymous. Thank you very much. And a $100 donation from Spirit Fox 22. It says, here's what I got. Hope this money can help even one person. And on that note, I would like to remind everyone that we are here playing RPGs for you guys, but also for the main reason of raising money for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. An interesting fact is that fewer than 50% of people actually receive treatment that have mental illnesses. NAMI is hoping to improve that number over time with programs to reduce the stigma around mental illness, improve the access to treatment, improve knowledge and resources for people that are dealing with and have mental illnesses. So it's an absolutely wonderful cause, wonderful charity. If you are able to, please do donate and help this wonderful cause.
Okay. Now this, I need to make a quick note. This encounter is another set encounter. Whoops, I punched. No, he has the sword. It's him who has the wand. Let's go ahead and cast missiles. But yeah, this is one of the set encounters. It's one I sometimes forget. I have in a run before forgotten that this was not random and quit and reloaded, and then came back and kept getting the same encounter, and then realized, oh yeah, this is the one it's an event battle, not a random one, so you can't cheese your way out of it. Okay, there's one set encounter left coming up. Moderately dangerous because one of our good old friends is back. I'm going to use my second haste spell here. We're higher level now, so it's not as dangerous, but it's still... things can go slightly wrong sometimes. Oh, and he's right up front, too. That makes things more interesting, though we have a lot less mana cores. So it's our good friend, the Dark Elf Lord. He has a different sprite, but he has the same -7 armor class, 108 hit points. Unfortunately, we don't get to loot him this time for no reason that I can figure out. They just decided not to have him carry any loot. They decided to destroy his equipment as soon as the battle's over, essentially. Which is unfortunate because I could use another +3 pseudoplate mail and +2 shield. But again, we are higher level now, so with the haste spell especially, we're attacking 3 times a turn. And we can get through him pretty quickly. We're also higher level, so we have a better chance of hitting. And we don't have the Symbol of Pain effect on us now, which also made the last battle fun. So that's it. That was a pretty good fight. And now we just have random encounters on our way out. And like that one.
23.
I guess that isn't too bad. I've never successfully... It's hard for me to keep track of those things. I'm very grateful that Dell's here to help me do this because one of the things you have to do in Pool of Radiance is fight 15 encounters in the first area just in order to complete the quest of clearing the slums out of monsters. And I can never keep count of those. So all I do is keep... Wow, same exact place. I need to save right before that square, obviously. 24.
Yep.
I need to... So I usually just keep going back and forth and grinding out the encounters, and then once I've gone back and forth 50 times and I haven't got an encounter anymore, I say, okay, I think I'm done with encounters, and then move on to clearing the rest of the slums out. So having a... I estimated that we'd be, depending on how it goes, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 100 encounters. Wow. Sooner that time, of course. So 25, we're at an even quarter of 100 now. So there's Unfortunately, not much else to do while I'm making my way out. Del, you can think of anything else to talk about at this point for these guys before we move on to the last area?
Not really, no. You got anything else up for there, host?
I have a question for you, MSKain.
Sure.
What drives you to play this?
No,
not like a mean way, but it's just like I don't really. It is rare to see people playing these 30-plus-year-old games. What drives you to? What do you enjoy about coming back to it over and over again?
One of the things about it is that I speedrun things that nobody else speedruns because I'm one of those people who really looks at the other speedruns that people do, and it's like I'm not sure that I can really do those kinds of things. Sometimes I feel like I want to try some of them, but it's just really hard to make my mark with it. So I do other things that I really enjoy that nobody else has done. And I find a lot of joy in coming up with the routes myself and planning it out. And these gold box games in particular are one of the nostalgic games of my childhood that I really loved. Curse of the Azure Bonds, I was kind of surprised that it was the game chosen for RPG Limit Break here over the first game, Pool of Radiance. But I'm kind of glad because it's the one that's actually closer to my heart because I played it a lot as a kid. In addition to the DOS versions, my dad gave me an Atari ST when I was a little kid. Very old gaming system, computer system. And this was one of the games I had on that. I didn't have any of the others of the 4 gold box set, but I had Curse of the Azure Bonds, and I played it a whole lot. It was one of the very first games that I truly completed, and has always been dear to my heart because of that. And it's just an interesting kind of game that was fun to do as a speed run. When I first started it, I wasn't sure how long it would take. Took for pretty much all of them. I figured that it might take several hours, but as I kept working on it, the numbers kept dropping until it's I think that the hour and a half-ish that it usually takes me to complete this game is a pretty nice time frame for a little RPG, especially one so old. Let's see. Now I forgot where I am again. Okay, now I know where I am. We're out. Okay, we're done. How many encounters did we get to?
30.
Okay. We have a few other cutscene-like things. They're just telling us what's happening to all of these other people in the game who don't make a big difference to us. Now we're going to do our final leveling up in the game. To the inn. No, I don't want to go to the inn yet. I need to go to the store first and pool all of our money and see how much we've got. 400. Oh, perfect. 400 platinum is just as much as I need. So, Hall, we get level 8 on most of our characters, and level 7 on our fighter magic user, which will give him 3 attacks every 2 turns now, which is the most important level up we get here. Just a few more spells to memorize. And
what does actually memorizing the spells do for you?
So instead of getting magic points to cast spells, instead each level a mage or a cleric has a certain number of spells that they can memorize in certain levels. Similar to Final Fantasy, the original, which we'll see Tazbot play later on, you can only use a certain number of spells at the first level. And later editions let you mix that up a little bit more with certain feats and things, but in the old editions, it's pretty much set. I can only memorize 5 first-level cleric spells and 5 second-level cleric spells, and so I can only take spells from those lists. So sometimes the lower-level spells are better than the higher ones, but you can't do anything about it. So that was Tyranthraxus. He revealed himself. Tyranthraxus was the big boss in the first set, in the first game, Pool of Radiance, but we defeated him. So he is taking control of us for revenge, which makes a bunch of sense. Plus, also, he is a demonic spirit who actually gets his... He inhabits other bodies and uses them in order to do his fighting for him, and so he plans to use all 6 of our characters as replacement bodies for him. This is an evil Rakshasa pretending to be an elven spirit. We attack it. Now we couldn't counter phase spiders or tricrine. Wow, no encounters in that map. That's kind of nice. So this is another thing that I've written out of the route, but which I'm going to do. I'm going to get the best items, the best fighting items in the game now. Ooh, nice. Yes, this is good. By rescuing this poor soul who's being chased by hellhounds. Hellhounds are very unfortunate. They breathe fire, but in first edition they are not immune to fire, so we can fireball them as well if we like, or we can just chop them up. They are fire using, so our frost brands are extra effective against them. As you can see, they're dropping pretty quick. I only recently took this out of the route almost on accident because I accidentally said no to rescuing the guy, and so I didn't have to fight. And then I realized that, well, that actually probably saves time. I don't actually need the magic items, but for the marathon here, I'm going to show off this part and show off the super awesome item that you get for rescuing this guy. With his dying words, he tells us where his treasure is buried. I don't really need to save the game, because even if I get encounters, I don't have to fight them. By bribing these Rakshasa with half my money, they will let me go. So it doesn't matter how many encounters I get at this point, in this area at least. This is a fake Rakshasa pretending to be somebody. Nice. Do not let us find you again, they say, and leave, but doesn't matter how many times. That was this guy called Nameless who's going to help us out. He was telling us to get on with it. We kind of ignore him because we want this treasure. So +5 longsword and the Girdle of Storm Giant Strength. Now, later editions would just have items that give you a bonus to strength, but wearing a Girdle of Giant Strength in the first games sets you at the strength of that character. I now have a 24 strength, which gives me an enormous bonus to hit with melee attacks and an enormous +12 damage when I hit in melee. So that's 34, are we at now?
Yes. And that's actually something they brought back in the most current edition of Dungeons & Dragons, is that magic items that give you a bonus to whatever, it just sets you to that number now.
Okay. Just a little bit easier to track and things. 5th edition did a lot of stuff to make things even easier than 3.5 did, and 3.5 especially was a huge improvement over 1st edition and 2nd edition. But despite that and complaining about it, I do have a nostalgic love for 1st edition AD&D as well, because I was actually brought up to play this game. With my mom's help, I made my first characters when I was about 5 years old, so I've been playing role-playing games my entire life, and, I still have some nostalgic love for not, just old retro games like this, but even old flawed game systems to a degree. Again, we're in a nice line to use a Wand of Lightning. The interesting thing about the Lightning Bolt spell is that it also will bounce off walls, so in certain situations you can hit enemies twice with it, which is pretty nice. Let's see, yes, they are in a place where I can use some more missiles on them. I need to be more judicious, though. So we came in here to Tyranthraxus's lair, and he's in the body of a storm giant right now. And he was going to get rid of our 3 magic items we've gotten, but Nameless suddenly appeared. Nameless is the guy who created Elias. He's a nameless bard. He appears in several different works of the novels of the Forgotten Realms universe that came out in the 80s and 90s. But he manages to temporarily lift the power of the bonds from us so that we can fight off Tyranthraxus's minions, and gives us back the magic items that Tyranthraxus tried to destroy. It doesn't exactly describe how he fooled Tyranthraxus in this way, because we see Tyranthraxus throw the items into the pool. But, whatever. It's a story plot. He then gets killed, but luckily this game is not canon, because, again, Nameless comes back in later books and gets his name back and all sorts of things. It's a big, huge history of why he's the Nameless Bard and everything that happened to him. Now, we have only one set encounter left in the game, and then a bunch of random encounters that are going to plague me on my way to the top. This is what Magic Missile is good for. Most of the time, one of the reasons I only have 1 half-elf mage is because even though he's a less effective wizard than a normal human would be if he was just a straight mage, it does allow me... I don't need magic as much because I have the Necklace of Missiles. But occasionally those spells like Stinking Cloud and even just a magic missile on a fleeing enemy are pretty useful. Okay, that's...
34.
34, right. We were at 30. Now, some of these I might end up fighting. We'll see, and depending on just how rough things get. These are, again, you can fight a random number of enemies from, as I recently found, 0 to, like, 8 or 9. So, depending on how many enemies we get, it may be faster for me to just blow them up. Helm of Dragons tells us where Tyranthraxus is, which we really don't need, but, it's required. We're getting kind of okay, final floor. We're approaching the final battle now. And there's some random encounters. How many are there? 4? Too many. I'm kind of low on my necklace missile charges because I took a couple more fights than I normally would. If there's like 1 or 2 enemies, I'll probably just blow them up, but if I get a lucky seed, which I have no idea how to reach again, there's only a few reliable places I know what the RNG is going to do. But if I get a lucky seed, I could make it to the end without any. Okay. I should probably see how many it is, but whatever. I already went out. So that's 36?
Yes.
Okay. Looks like it's going to be 36 right now, which isn't too bad. I think. Haha, okay, this is it. No more random encounters. We are now before the final door. Use 1 more Dust of Disappearance just for safety. Cast our haste spell. Cast our Bless and Prayer. And in we go to fight Tyrant Thraxus and his minions. Now, this big temple of his, you can fight a bunch of encounters in other places. And, you know, just to try and diminish these numbers, because this is a huge amount of enemies. But, you know, since we are invisible and therefore invincible, because invisibility is invincibility, we're just going to blow them all up. More enemies in one go is a lot faster than taking out a bunch of smaller groups and then coming back, when you can hit this many enemies in with every character. Kind of low roll there first. The High Priests have a lot of hit points and pretty good saving throw. You can make... would you like to describe saving throws, Del?
The saving throws are what they use to avoid various effects. It could be will, constitution, or reflex in the older games. Basically, you roll a d20 and you add whatever the modifier is. So the higher the saving throw is, the more likely they are to either take half or no damage, depending on various other abilities they would have.
Yep. It's even more complicated in the old first edition. You have saving throws versus death spells, versus poison, versus rod, staves, and wands, a couple of other weird ones. But they're just basically things. Most spells give a saving throw. One of the things that makes the first level magic missile spell so great is that there's no saving throw against it. There's almost no defense against magic missile, and it's a first level spell. But a lot of your area spells, especially like fireballs and lightning bolts, you get that saving throw to take half damage. And so a lot of powerful monsters will only take half damage from it. So not only do you have the RNG of how much damage you roll, but you have the RNG affecting you of whether the enemies will actually make their saving throw to take half damage or not. So if you get really lucky, like I did in the very first fight against the Fire Knives, you can blow up an entire group in 1 or 2 fireballs. If you're less lucky, you may need to use many instances before the enemies get taken down. But we got some pretty good rolls so far this time around. We only have a few of the clerics left, and then Tyrant Thraxus. Tyrant Thraxus is immune to fire. He's in the body of a storm giant and would love to hurl lightning bolts at us, but once again, he can't see us, so all he can do is to watch as his minions are decimated, and then once his minions are decimated, we will go confront him directly and punch him in the face with our swords. Time will not be coming up on the final defeat. There's a final text box afterwards, which is where time is for this game. Okay, those 3 done. Let's mop up with swords. You're not using a sword, you're using a staff, so I think he's immune. Oh, well. Nope, he took... Okay, Magic Missile did the job. Get a bunch of experience, and Tyrant Thraxus' spirit comes out of his body. He tries to escape through the Pool of Radiance, which is his way out, but with the Gauntlet of Moander, we destroy it. His spirit form crumbles, and then our last bond finally fades. We are free at last! And now the Knights of Myth Draenor bust in to take us away to a celebratory feast, and coming up is the final text box and time. The very last pixels take a long time to fade for drama. You have won. Game, that's time. So what was my final time there?
You had a 1:36:59.
Not bad. That's pretty good considering all the marathon stuff I did and nicely underestimate. So, all right, thank you all for watching. That was Curse of the Azure Bonds, and I know that coming up, we still have a lot of great speed runs. This is going the rest of the week. Coming up next, we have a very wonderful game as well, another great old school game, an Illusion of Gaia, being raced between two great runners in Bowie the Hero and Zheal. So stick around for that and for everything else you can. But that's me signing off, so thank you all again.
Thank you again so much for that run, MSKain. That was an absolute blast to watch. I really, really enjoyed that. So in just a few minutes, we're actually going to be having a quick interview with those racers of the upcoming Illusion of Gaia run between Zheal and Bowie the Hero. Before that, let's have a few donations that have come in the last few minutes. We have a $10 donation from Taylor. It says, thank you for helping to remove the stigma of mental illness and make it easier for folks to get help. A $25 donation from Dr. Rosalia. Glad to see there's another event just for RPGs. I've been suffering from PTSD, clinical depression, and anxiety, and I'm super happy to see there's an event for it. Keep up the good work. We have a $100 donation from Andrew122 with no comment. Thank you so much, Andrew. everyone. Now we're going to have a brief interview between with Zheal and BOWIEtheHERO, our runners for the upcoming game Illusion of Gaia.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to RPG Limit Break 2019. Again, we are setting up for an awesome race, what we hope to be an awesome race of Illusion of Gaia. What's up, gentlemen? Y'all excited?
Yeah, definitely. It's been a...
I said before, it will be epic and horrible at the same time.
They were practicing, right? We had to, like, pull them out of the practice room, like, okay, you got to go on stage. Let's do this. Bowie, I want to talk to you first. I had the pleasure of interviewing you last year, and we got to talk a little bit. I was like, okay, if you could pick the next run that you get to do at a limit break, what would it be? And you pulled up. We happen to have it on the table as a prize. Illusion of Gaia. What does it mean to you to get to showcase this game this year?
I mean, it's quite a big deal. I mean, my very, very first speed game of all time. I learned from Poexel sitting in the audience just there from the 100% run back in 2013. So 6 years on, I finally get a chance to actually showcase the run that kind of got me into speedrunning in the first place. And I mean, I love the 100% category, but any percent is that little bit faster, that little bit slicker, and that little bit more dangerous. So it's definitely kind of like I would call the ultimate category, just because of how execution heavy the game is. I hate to use a comparison, and someone's definitely going to say no, it's not. But like to have like Mega Man X level execution for 2 hours is a bit an ordeal, to say the least. So.
Definitely looking forward to this. I'd also like to thank you for saying 6 years. It was actually 7 years since Poexel last ran this. It was SGU 2012, and now I feel old.
Yeah.
I'm sure Poexel's with me right now on that. It has been that many years since that. Zheal, I want to talk to you a little bit. So obviously, I knew Bowie, I knew he loved this game, and I was like, okay, I hadn't heard of this Zheal runner, and Bowie was telling me oh, he's really good. He kind of came out onto the scene for speedrunning that you're very, very strong at games like Secret of Mana, Secret of Evermore. Now, obviously, very strong at this now. Kind of, what was your initial inspiration for getting into speedrunning, and what keeps you going?
I mean, my first inspiration to get into the speedrun community was I split up with my old friends because they were all busy, and we were playing World of Warcraft a lot, and and
this is a common story actually for people getting into speedrun.
And suddenly I were all alone because they had suddenly had children, and I'm a fucking nerd, and and I tried to find another hobby, and I liked watching stuff like HDQ, and I was always interested in speedrunning, and it was the classic story. I watched the speedrun, and I thought wow, I could never do that. It looks so insanely nice and precise, and those guys are so unbelievably skilled.
This is also a common story for getting into speedrunning.
Yeah. And then I watched Meta Sigma. I watched Meta Sigma a lot, running Secret of Evermore. And I thought, hey, I can try that too. And I wanted to start with something easy, not easy, but something short. something short.
Just topping Meta Sigma seemed pretty easy. All right,
it wasn't Evermore. It wasn't Evermore. I thought, let's try it. And I started actually with Super Mario World 11
Oh, okay. Yep.
And I started also streaming, but only for recording purposes. And without cam, without talking, just recording it. And I actually got a 10 minutes, 40 seconds, 11 access, which is not so bad, actually. It's still like top 60 or something.
It's no big deal.
It's not so bad.
Top 60 means something in SNW where they have 5,000 runners.
Yeah.
So, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not so bad. And then I came in contact with Kroik.
Yes. Yeah.
Legend. And he introduced me into the Secret of Evermore community. And from there, it just went on and went on and went on. And what drives me, I play my childhood games. You know, it's every speedrun so far I played was always a game I really enjoyed as a child, and I wanted to bring it to the next level with speedrunning, and I want to give my best, and that's actually all.
Yeah. We look forward to both of you getting to showcase those skills for those, again, these childhood favorites of yours. I also want to talk to you, both of you. So you brought it up a little bit, Bowie, that, again, we've seen Illusion of Gaia multiple times at kind of major marathons over the last few years, but they have always been that 100% category generally. For this any percent, tell me what is that different dynamic? I know they get the 50 red jewels. I know that can lead to your character being a little bit stronger throughout the run. What is the different dynamic you all of a sudden have to deal with in this game?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound like it's much, much for like 1 less attack, 1 less defense, 1 less HP, and then also upgrades to skills, which kind of almost doubles their damage for 100%. So there are moments when you'd be able to kind of just use a skill to one-shot an enemy and get past a little bit quicker. But it's about having to use a little bit more precise movement to get around with that extra risk. And there are scenarios where having 1 less HP and 1 less defense means that you're dying 1 hit earlier. So you have to be that a bit tighter. And also there's one trick about an hour and 10 into the run, which is called the Quaker skip, which was a lot easier in 100%, where you can like fire a dark fire up and then you explode it to hit an enemy twice and take him out.
Sure.
But now we actually have to use a more precise manner of doing that. Funnily enough, my PB actually failed that, and that's like the one blemish in my run, because I was 1 pixel too far to the right, which kind of knocked the enemy the wrong way. So those little tiny tricks will kind of come out as it goes.
So we're looking forward to the PB from you then here up on stage.
My PB today.
Also the fact that it's kind of like a roller coaster run. Like you don't get any status upgrades through the whole game. Like you have to clear a room and get strength upgrade, for example. We don't get that, and we catch up. Like every time you kill a boss, you get all the stats upgrades at once.
Yeah,
you missed.
I mean, the run wouldn't be possible if that wasn't the thing. It's so genius. I love it.
Yeah, and that's why it's a roller coaster of your stat progression. Like
Sure, you're very weak for a second, and then all of a sudden you get this
exactly.
increase.
Yeah, you kill a boss, and then the next dungeon is easy, and then the next dungeon after that is actually pretty hard because you're lacking all the stat upgrades.
One final question for you guys before I let you get up there and have this race. Just what is the #1 segment or boss or whatever it might be that each of you are least looking forward to having to execute on stage today?
I mean, we have gentlemen agreed on 1 save in the entire run because it's just silly, but Moo and the vampires. The dungeon itself isn't tricky, but the boss can just take you out completely.
And you said moon and vampires.
Moo, M-U, Moo.
Oh, I was thinking like a cow.
No, God, no.
I was like, what is this dungeon?
The legendary area of Moo, I guess, the continent of Moo.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's basically the first 20 minutes, half an hour to get into the game, to get used to everything, like the different setup and everything.
Yeah, that's absolutely something that a lot of people don't know coming here, getting to perform on stage. It's like, it's not in your chair with your air conditioning, with exactly your TV or anything. So
aircon. I wish I had that.
All right, gentlemen. Well, best of luck to both of you on this run again, guys. We got Zheal and Bowie showing up for Illusion the Guy in an any % race starting up right about now.
Alrighty, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Welcome back, everybody, to RPG Limit Break 2019. The Illusion of Gaia race is going to be starting very soon. Thank you very much to Spike Vegeta and also Zheal and BOWIEtheHERO for the interview. That is always greatly appreciated. And we are going to go over to a brief commercial break in order to, prepare for the run, and then we are going to be back. Alrighty, we are back from the brief commercial break. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Welcome back to RPG Limit Break 2019, which is coming to you from Salt Lake City, Utah, the USA. We are raising money for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which was formed in 1979 as grassroots advocacy organization by a group of parents whose children suffered with serious mental illnesses. And NAMI have maintained that focus to this day. And we did also receive quite a few donations here in support for the upcoming Illusion of Gaia. So let me read some of those real quick. So Zuckerstrew has donated $20, thank you very much for that, and says, "Hey everyone, nice event. Held by awesome guys for a great cause, loving it. Good luck good luck betting on the one and only hero with his beautiful bandana. Greetings from Germany." Well, greetings from the USA here. Thank you very much. $20 by Monkoloco. RPG Limit Break is truly one-of-a-kind event that I enjoy watching every time it comes around. Thanks for doing what you do, guys. Thank you very much for donating. We did also receive a $5 donation by Trials of Fire. It is great to have such an amazing event that raises awareness for mental illness. I do tend to agree. We have a $20 donation by Raycodactylus136 and says, "Thank you to everyone involved in Limit Break for contributing to such a wonderful cause. Good luck to Bowie and Zheal on the IOG race." We do have two more donations. One more donation was for a $100 by Anonymous. No comment attached to that, but thank you very much for your great generosity. That is greatly appreciated. And one more $5 donation by Dawn. Lots of love, Zheal. IOG, let's go. Thank you very much everybody for your generous donations. We have raised a lot of money already, and well, it is a cause very dear to many of our hearts. While we are still setting up, let me tell you a little bit more about this. RPG Limit Break 2019 proudly supports the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI. To get involved in the fight against mental illness and the stigmas it can bring, reach out to NAMI via their state organizations or on Facebook, where they can be found as NAMI, on Instagram and Twitter as @NAMI Communicate or NAMI, N-A-M-I, communicate, to check out their Tumblr blog, notalone.nami.org. It's not a weakness to need help. Reach out if you think you need help.